Hello, everyone. This week we're going to be talking about different families, family systems, Baumrid's model, which looks at two different dimensions and focuses on four different parenting styles. Dr. Russ, she laid out really well with her mobile explanations and diagrams as to how the family systems kind of work, where how it's a family unit emotionally, and if something affects one person, it's going to affect everybody else either directly or indirectly throughout the family. If one person, the example she used was grades. If somebody gets a bad grade, there's a slight disorientation that's going on, or offset from the set point that goes on throughout a little bit of time, and then it eventually works back to that set point or homeostasis. Couple things that we're going to look at with family systems is fusion, which is families who are close together and how things affect each other more directly instead of differentiation, which is families who are more apart, so they're not as affected by each other. For fusion, I can use the example when I was younger. My family was very close. I had a single mother with 4 kids. We all lived in the same house. And so everything was pretty dependent upon one another, making sure they're doing what they need to do. And if one person was mad, everyone else kind of felt the tension in that house. As far as differentiation goes, my family is now pretty well spread out, and individual things that happen to one another don't necessarily affect everyone else all that much. I've got family all across Minnesota, and now I'm up here in North Dakota, and I can tell you most of my family probably doesn't have a clue what goes on even on a daily basis in my life, so we don't talk much. So that's a little bit on family systems and how they work interchangeably. The next thing we're going to look at is Baumrid's model, which focuses on two different dimensions: responsiveness and demandingness. This model, there's a perfect diagram. It's 4-3 on page 129 in the book, and it lays it out really, really nice as to how you can have a high demandingness versus a low responsiveness. The model it's kind of a 4 square. It looks really good. In fact, I got a picture of it here. So if you can see it, it's up there in the book. You've all probably seen it. So this is what breaks down the 4 different types of families. And so I'm going to give you an overview of each of the 4 different types of parenting, I guess you could say. And then we'll look at an example from each. So the first one is, Dr. Russ looked at it backward, or the other way around, but I'm going to start with the way they came out in the book. The first one is authoritative, which is a warm, firm parenting style. It's consistent standards of conduct as far as throughout. There's open discussion between the parents and the children as to what they believe should be going on. The parents focus on a high value of development for the child. They want them to learn. They also ultimately are responsible for the behavior, so they also feel directly responsible if the child isn't behaving. There's an equal balance over responsiveness and demandingness, which also puts a balance in restrictiveness and anatomy. I look at this with my own upbringing, where there were several times where my parents would talk to me about what was going on in school, even though it wasn't very often. So, which another aspect of this is these parenting styles that we're going to go over, they're mixed. Not all parents are all one thing all the time. So the second one we're going to talk about is authoritarian, which the example used in the lecture was Adrian Peterson, I believe. He is an authoritarian parent. He believes that he shows his love by being strict and showing his kids what is wrong. When I was 16, I moved out and lived with someone else who was more of an authoritarian styled parent, and I didn't care for it much. So they place a high value on obedience and conformity. There's a high demandingness but low responsiveness. They usually focus on an absolute disciplinary measure. The child should accept without question the rules of the house, and the parents don't typically encourage independent behavior, and there is a high importance on restricting autonomy between the child. Um, More often than not, this is the type of parenting that is focused on in minority families, and especially in families in poor or dangerous neighborhoods. It could be due to living in dangerous neighborhoods and be harmful for whites if this type of parenting is followed, where the child doesn't have a chance to grow and learn. I'll go back to when I moved out. I lived with a wonderful couple, and she was more authoritative, but he was straight up authoritarian. What he said goes. Do not ask any questions about it. The third type of parenting style is indulgent. There is a high responsiveness and low demandingness. The parents are usually accepting, they're benign, and very, very passive in their discipline. They give a high degree of freedom to the child. They believe control might be an infringement that could interfere with a healthy development for the child. Instead of shaping behavior, they view themselves more as a resource for the child to come to them and talk to them if they want to or need to. And their biggest concern is raising a happy child. I've got an example of this. It is a friend of my wife's and her family. I'll call him Jason and her Alyssa. Jason was married, and his wife left him right after they had a kid. And so it was just Jason and his daughter Alyssa. And Alyssa was a child who had many, many opportunities to do whatever she wanted, go wherever she wanted as far as education goes, as far as opportunities go. And she chose, because of her parents' parenting style, I believe, she chose to not go to her max potential. She ended up into drugs. She ended up dropping out of school at a very young age, I thought, about 14. She quit playing sports. She was an amazing lacrosse player, and she don't do that anymore. I know she spent some time in jail, but Jason's main focus was that she was happy and could do whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted, instead of being a parent. And I remember numerous times when my wife and I first got together, of them telling him directly, you need to stop being her friend, you need to be her parent. So that'll take us to the last type of parenting, which is an indifferent parent. This is low demandingness and low responsiveness. The parent typically only cares about themselves. They're not worried about where their child is or what their child is doing. There is almost no discipline, probably. They don't have a need to be aware of their child whatsoever. They only care about themselves. So the news article, there was a news article in the Tribune this last week where I believe it was a 3-year-old was running around an apartment building outside with a box cutter, stabbing it in the ground, chasing cars with it. First off, where does a 3-year-old get a box cutter? But the parents were nowhere in sight. This particular instance, I kind of have somewhat of a connection to. My wife was actually at that apartment complex that day, so she actually got to see this kid running around. And this kid ran around for about 45 minutes before the parents showed up, because they were, I think they said at the store. So had no idea where their child was. That lady actually got charged with neglect, which is one of the things with an indifferent parent, that it can be so severe that they do end up going to the neglect or abuse level. So these are the 4 different types of parenting styles. The fusion we looked at, and differentiation between the families. The last thing I'm going to do here is there are 2 examples that Dr. Russ gave. Sarah, I believe, is an indulgent parent, believes her kid can do no wrong, and this is her only focus is making the child happy. So she takes the child to get ice cream after finding out that the child may have done something wrong. John, on the other side, I believe his parent is an authoritarian parent. I don't think it's a very effective type of parenting, since what had happened in this case, the kid was still resentful and still bullied after the effect. But he supposedly took care of it through some sort of means. So I got two other examples here. I'm going to read them here to you, and then I'm going to actually type them out so that you can go back and read them if you want at the bottom of my post here. The first one is going to be Mary. She wants to go to a party on the last night of her junior year of high school. She doesn't tell her parents she is going, nor do they ask. Mary gets arrested for underage drinking, and when the police call her parents only say, "Good, she can sit in jail for the night." My other example or scenario is Mike. Mike just at 16 got his driver's license and a new car from his parents. His parents set rules that Mike also understood and agreed to. He gets a speeding ticket the next week and has to sit down one night with his parents to discuss what his punishment should be for not only breaking their rules, but also the law. So these two scenarios, I'll, like I said, type at the bottom of the page. You guys can answer them or tell me what type of parenting style you believe they are, and I look forward to hearing your comments. Have a good week, everyone.